Let's talk about tubular even count peyote. You know, when you're making peyote, quite frequently it's flat and it's super easy to do, and we've already done videos on how to do that. Tubular peyote is a little bit trickier, and mainly it's trickier in the starting of the peyote. Getting it to go vertical is a bit of a trick. So I've got a couple of tips for you on that, and I've also got some tips for you on what to do if those first couple of rows that you worked on still look kind of eh. I've got a trick for that too. So let's take a look at the beads. I'm working here with some just some size 8 seed beads. Seed beads actually work better with tubular peyote than delicas or aicos or any kind of cylinder shaped beads. So it's kind of the opposite of what we tell you with your flat peyote. With flat peyote, you kind of want that brick shape. With tubular peyote, you need something that's a little more rounded. So what I'm going to do here is pick up an even number of beads. In this case, I'm going to pick up 8. We'll see if I can count. That one's kind of skinny, so I'm gonna make him go away off to the side. Don't be afraid to cull your beads, because the more evenly sized they are, the more even your project is going to look also. So let's just make sure that I've got 8, and see, look, I still can't count, so there's 8. Sometimes people will tell you to tie a knot when you turn this into a circle. I am going to say do not tie a knot, and there's a reason for that, and I'm going to show you that here in a minute. But what I like to do is just come back from the tail end, go back up through all of the beads again. When you tighten that up, see how you just kind of end up with this loop of thread right down here? It doesn't actually turn into a circle. To actually get it to turn into a circle, you need to keep going around and pass through that very first bead again, and now when you tighten up, there's your pretty circle. So you'll have your tail thread coming out on one side and your working thread coming out on the other. This also means that you do not have to use a stop bead, although if you have trouble with your tensions here, you can always add a stop bead, and that will help hold the tension in this if that becomes a problem for you. A lot of people, because trying to get these beads to grow up instead of out to the side can be a problem. That's where dowels come in, and you can get little plywood rods at your basic local hobby shop, or in this case these are knitting needles. Knitting needles are a great way to use a dowel. Many of us have knitting needles on hand. I've found out that there's a lot of crossover between knitters and beaders. And so that other thing that gives us is a variety of sizes so that you can find the one that fits the whole of your tube best. In this case, I'm pretty sure this is going to be the size that I need. So we're just going to, and this is how you're going to check it. You're just going to poke it down inside. And actually this one's a little bit too big. I'm having some trouble getting through there when I put it through there. See how I've got all the thread showing? So we're going to go down a size here. Actually, this is the next size. We'll check this one. What I want to be able to see is that it moves and that I don't have, that the beads are sitting right next to each other, so I don't have a whole lot of extra thread showing. So that's what we've got going on here. The downside of a dowel is simply that it gives you one more piece that you have to try to hold on to as you're working. You get better at using a dowel, and at first I completely resisted dowels, but now I've kind of come around to dowels. So what I'm going to do is just the same way that I would do with a flat peyote. I'm picking up a bead, and I'm passing a bead, and I'm going to pass through the next bead. So I skipped one for this guy to sit on top of, and I kind of manhandle it and make those sit stacked. There we go. Now it's sitting nice and stacked. So you can see that tension is going to be your friend here. So I'm picking up the next bead, skipping a bead for it to sit on top of, and passing through the next bead. So as I'm tightening this up, I want that bead to sit up on top. There we go. This guy actually, the first guy actually ended up going under and not over, so I'm going to force him to go up. Once you get this first row or two done, it's all golden. So just you remember that you have to kind of work your way through these first two. I'm kind of pinching it with my fingers also to give myself some extra tension on those beads. Picking up a bead, skipping one for it to sit next to, passing through the next bead. There we go, it's sitting up on top. And then we've got one more bead to add on this row. And so we're skipping a bead, passing through the next bead, kind of coming at it from the top direction, which is helping that sit up on top instead of wanting to go to the bottom. And then the last thing that you have to do at the end of every row is now I'm going to do a step up through the first sticky outy bead of the row that I just finished. So now I'm going to do that, make sure I don't loop my thread here. There we go. We got that very first pesky row all taken care of. And now I'm just making sure that I'm holding tension on this as I keep going. So picking up a bead, pass through the next sticky outy bead. Pick up a bead, and you can just kind of twirl this around your dowel, or you can move your dowel, whichever is most comfortable for you. In this case, this is a little bit loose on my dowel, so I'm twirling it around the dowel is no problem. And you'll just keep going until you've added all 4 beads on this row. And then here is where we're going through the bead, the sticky outy bead, and then this bead right here is where our step up is to the first bead of the row that we're currently on. So one way to keep track is to know how many beads you're adding on each row. And so when you get to number 4, you know you've got the step up. The other way to keep track of it is to know when you see what I call this great big hill. When you see 3 beads in a row here on a diagonal, that means that's your step up. So your new bead will sit on top of the first bead, and then you're passing through the top 2 beads of that hill for your step up. And it's very important in even count peyote that you get that step up every single time. So let's do one more row here. And passing through the sticky outies. Pass through the sticky outie. I like to give my thread an extra little tug after I've made each stitch. It just helps hold some tension in. So if you're a super loose beater, that's something to keep in mind. The other thing I like to do is put my finger over that intersection that I just worked with. Excuse me. Okay, so here we came to the hill. So this is where I've got the 3 beads in a row. It's the last bead of this group. So we're skipping one for it to sit on top of and passing through the next 2. And see how pretty that's looking? Okay, so here's the thing. Sometimes you don't get to see the up beads and the down beads as well on your first initial round. And that's because we had that extra pass of thread through there. So what you can actually do is once you kind of have this tube established and going, you can actually go back and pick out your first row or 2. And it's a little bit persnickety because you have to take a needle and find the right thread and pull it out all the way around because there's 2 passes of thread that are going through there. But usually you can get a couple at a time. Okay, so it's not the top thread, it's the bottom thread. Come on, Busta. Like I said, it's a little persnickety, but it can really make a difference when you are creating something that you want to join the 2 ends together and you're having trouble joining the 2 ends. It's probably because you're having trouble seeing the up beads versus the down beads. And by pulling out this first row, what'll happen is you'll get a much more defined up bead and down bead section. So now when I look at this, I can tell, here's my up beads right here, here, and here's my down beads. So that will make a big difference. And that is one reason why not to tie any knots on that initial round. Because if you've tied a knot on that initial round, then you're not going to be able to do this picking out and making your work look really pristine. So that is the trick on tubular peyote using an even count.